Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I'm honored to be able to hang out from somebody from the West Coast, okay? So don't hold it against her. But we are from the Midwest. You know, we think of you guys on a different island almost. So it's Rosa Ponce de Leon from Empower to Bloom. How are you today?
I'm great, Dave. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be
Oh my
interviewing
gosh,
you.
absolutely. Super excited, a founder and CEO. So you get special attention anytime you're a founder and CEO, you automatically, rise a level in my book. So tell us a little bit about Empower to Bloom, what that's about and what fun stuff you guys are doing right now.
Well, Empower to Bloom is kind of a little brainchild that a couple years ago I decided to embark on this journey of starting my own company. It's kind of a dream I had a long time. I got my MBA back in 2015, and I figured I'll do something with it one day. And that time came in, a little bit more in 2019. So we were only about a year old, and a lot of back end stuff, as I'm sure you know about from all your business endeavors.
Sure.
And we're basically a coaching company.
Okay.
I like to deal with, I'm a leadership coach and career strategist. So I believe that, there's a lot of different paths set before us by society, by our friends, by people. And sometimes we embark on those paths, but they're not unique to our talents and our gifts. And so I'm really a fan of, what is your skill set and what strategy do you need to implement to make the most out of your abilities and your values so that you can really be fulfilled in your career.
Oh my gosh, I'm writing faster than I'm not used to writing this fast because there's so much there to unpack. So thank you for doing that, sharing that. Right away, we talk a lot about the intersection between personal growth and business growth. So we jumped right in. There's the first question that I have. So 2019, 2018, whatever that looked like for you, there was, like you said, you had this idea to start your own business. And we run into a lot of people on our podcast that they want to start a business. They maybe don't know where to start. It's different for all different people. I interviewed somebody recently where their mom and their dad were both entrepreneurs. Then I, run into somebody like me who had never had a parent that started their own business. So when you think back to that spot where you're like, that's it, there was something that made you kind of jump off the pier and into the water. Do you remember that specific situation, and share as
Very
much as you
much.
feel comfortable sharing with our listeners?
Yeah. So again, I'm a fan of finding a home for my talents and my abilities. I think that there's plenty of opportunities and options out there, but not every one of those options and opportunities is for you. And the
Okay.
key is to know yourself. And so for me, I as a side note, I still do work full time in a day job, and I'm in law enforcement. So that I wasn't necessarily looking to retire. I was actually at a crossroads of, is it time for me to promote again?
Okay.
And I was getting ready to gear up for an exam there to go into management, and it just wasn't feeling right. And so what I realized is that if I were to go to management, at least now, the timing wasn't right, because there's still a big generation of new people that need to be trained, and my skill set is in coaching people and developing people. That's what I love to do. And
Okay.
it wasn't the right time to give that up. So instead I decided to focus my energy on starting this business. And I didn't know anything about it. So the first thing I did is I started reading about, is coaching even viable, like what's going
Sure.
on. And I mean, it was a whole new world that unpacked out of that. And I did hire a coach. I went to a 4-day retreat where I met with other like-minded people that were looking to do the same thing. And that was amazing. So I did invest in myself.
Okay.
A lot of people have a hard time asking for help, but like me, I was definitely all about asking for help. I didn't want to start anything new that people already know how to do. So
Sure.
I went ahead and invested. I realized it was viable. It's something I very much could do, knowing that I still have a full-time job and that I could only devote a certain amount of hours each week to this business.
Sure.
And so that gave me the confidence of knowing, okay, now that I see what it is and what it requires of me, I can definitely CEO this thing, and I can definitely create the content and deliver and provide the service that I want to provide, that is high quality to my clients. So once I saw that possibility, I just went in with both feet. And I think people have such a fear of going in and just taking that jump because
Right.
they're afraid to fail. And you and I spoke before about failure, and
Yeah.
failure is part of it. It's not going to come out perfect right out of the gate, but it's going to be something that you can, at least when you're in motion and you have traction, you can taper it and tailor it so that you get better and better.
Sure. So, and I have this analogy of this visualization in my head, in this case, Rosa, where I'm thinking there's two ways to do this. You can either kind of walk into the water where, you know, you're just up to a couple inches and you get acclimated to it. And then you go out maybe to your ankles and then your knees. I mean, you can do it at your pace,
Right.
or you can take and find a cliff, or you can find a bank where you jump off and it's immediately over your head, and you can either sink or swim. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and that's what's so awesome about, you know, living in America, is you get to be able to, you know, decide what works best for you. How did you decide? Because you're one of the few that I've actually talked with that still have that full-time job, which, thank you again for your service. We're honored to have you know, law enforcement on. So I appreciate that and all that you do there. How did you decide? I mean, because so many people are like, it's either one or the other, right? I have to quit my job and I have to jump into this, as opposed to kind of, you know, starting it the way you did. Do you recall that? Like,
Sure.
which one am I going to do? How did you come to that decision?
So I think one of the biggest life lessons that we get to learn is, you know, sometimes we pend our life for, I'll do this when, or I'll do this when the time is right. The time is never going to be right. So if you
Yeah.
keep waiting for this magic moment, that
Yeah.
magic moment doesn't exist. So you have to start with what you have. It's not what I want to have to get, like, what do I have right now? And I looked at my calendar. I go, I can do this many hours each week.
Sure.
So I did kind of an evaluation of, yes, I'm working full time, but realistically, I can set aside this many hours to do the business. And once I had that starting point, then I could surround myself with people to support it. So I sold my house.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Right. So I didn't want a mortgage. I didn't want to deal with other things that would potentially become liabilities, right? If I'm
Okay.
going to do this, I'm going to create the circumstances that are going to remove stressors from my life that I don't need. So I went ahead and made some changes in my life that would set me up to win.
Okay.
So one of those was how many hours, and then I didn't know anything about virtual assistants, for
Okay.
example,
Sure.
but they exist and they're
Yep.
great. You
Yep.
can hire someone like that that doesn't even have to be in your same city. They can be in a totally different, they can be in Milwaukee.
Yep. Yes.
I'm
Thank
not
you.
hating on the
Yes.
Midwest.
Yes.
They can be anywhere. In fact, one of my my advertisers that helps me with advertising is out there. So shout out.
Awesome.
But the idea here is that once you know what you have, you can build a team around that
Okay.
and then move forward and succeed. So I did set aside a little bit of money to invest, whether for some people that means getting a loan or whatever it means. Now
Sure.
you have a budget.
Sure.
And then you decide accordingly. So you have to start with what you have. You can't wait for the timing to be right. You can't wait for the stars to align
Yeah.
or for, you know, all these things to be there for you. They're not. You have to make them happen.
Wow, that's so awesome. I wrote that down. Magic moments don't exist. So if you're listening, and that's so true, right? If you're listening, you don't wake up one day and there's a sign in your front yard. You know, I mean, there's not an airplane flying overhead with a trailer message, now's the day to start. I mean, but the reality is, to your point, there's a lot of fear in this
Right.
whole, you know, mindset. And I think, you know, I use fear, the acronym false information, or no, fear, it's FEAR, false
False evidence.
expectations,
Okay.
expectations appearing real. You know, the
Okay.
false expectations, the thing you think are going to have, are so real. You know, that's why, like for us, you don't even know what this is, but on January 1st, they have the Polar Bear Club, where we go into Lake Michigan on January 1st and we jump in the water. Okay. Some years there's ice that you have to kind of break out. But, you know, the year that I did it, I jumped in, I got up, you know, I just walked out until it was here. And there were actually people in scuba gear all heated on that said, hey, this is as far as you can go because you might freeze and not come back, you know. But that's what, there's such a fear there that I don't want to take that first step. So I commend you for that. And you probably, as a coach, then start to look at fears that people have and help them through those things. Have you picked up any feedback or any advice for somebody that's kind of like contemplating jumping in, getting a lot of negativity from family, maybe not the support that they need? What's your wisdom for those people?
So the first thing that I always talk about in my coaching is purpose. Like, we were all created with a purpose on this earth, and you can choose to do whatever you want with that purpose. You have value, you have something to offer to this world, and you get to decide how deep you want to go with it. And if you are having confidence issues where you don't know that you have anything to offer, the first thing you have to believe is that this is a fact. You have a purpose. You're not here by accident.
Yeah.
You didn't just fall into the earth to, to just exist and eat and die, right?
Right. Yep.
There's
Yep.
so much more
Yep.
to you. And when you take the time to unpack what you have to give and to offer, and if you're not excited about who you are, then start there. Start getting excited about who you are, because if you can't invest in yourself, if you can't bank, or you go to Vegas and you play the odds right on your favorite team, you
Sure.
got to play the odds, and the odds are really good when you invest in yourself, because
Sure.
the return is guaranteed. You have every bit of control, and decision making power to see where that return is going to come from. So you are a valuable investment, and you should invest in yourself every time you get the chance. And so I think when you realize that purpose is there, and the world will make room for it, because
Yeah.
there's a need somewhere out there, that now becomes just a big snowball effect, right? You
Sure.
start little, and then you just start gathering momentum, and it
Sure.
it definitely unfolds as long as you stay committed.
That's so cool. I mean, my gosh, I think I wrote down, we have a choice of either thriving or just surviving, right? I mean, we
Yes.
make that decision. And I can tell you personally from my spot right now, I'm challenged with my purpose and trying to understand, it's one thing to provide information, it's one thing to share your life with people. I'm trying to kind of go deeper with that. So that word, I wrote that down for me is, what's your purpose? And I
Hmm.
try and figure out, like I said, it's one thing to coach somebody, but there's like a deeper purpose, right?
Right.
And to try and find that, and combine that with being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, making money, making it work, there's such a balance and such a, like a give and take. How did you reveal or come to understand your purpose? Because I think that's a lot of people get stuck there, and then they retreat right back into the comfort zone, and they just live on their 9 to 5. Nothing wrong with that. It just, you could have so much more potentially, some people. And so when you were at that spot, how did you find your purpose?
So there comes a time where you if you take the moment, right? We're this society wires us to just be go 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 go, and there's
Mhm.
nothing built in to say take a moment and breathe and figure out if go 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 is where you need to be.
Right.
Because if you don't take that moment for yourself, you don't get to figure out what is it that I'm different about, what is unique about me and
Yeah.
wonderful about me, that maybe is undervalued. Maybe I've been trying to fit into molds that are out there for me, and those molds don't define me correctly, right? So I'm defaulting that uh you know development side to other people, where I could be more strategic and say, wait a minute, maybe I don't want to develop that's not my strength. I want to play to my strengths.
Sure.
So this thing might be developing something, I'm putting in so much work, but that's not even my strength. So why am I even doing this? Okay, I get that they need it, but maybe someone else is better for that.
Sure.
So taking that step back to recognizing what are my true attributes, what are my strengths, so that I can play to them. And
Sure.
then secondly, what are the external things that are frustrating me, that I take for granted, that I probably should be the one taking action about, right? Those are the things. There's the, where the where that
Yeah.
marriage happens of,
Yeah.
there's a gap in the marketplace, and I see it, it's completely obvious to me. If I had the chance, I could totally fix it. Well,
Sure.
here's your chance, go fix it.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself permission to do that. So those things, those two things mainly have to happen. What are the things that are really frustrating you? For me, though, that thing was just the way corporate was working. Now, so many people are frustrated in the way that they do work. And a lot of these corporations that were these big names now are starting to show some cracks in their foundation. And you
Sure.
go, okay, well, where did they not adapt to the world, right?
Sure.
So something happened there in leadership that caused them to fall apart. So I then found that those were my passions now.
And so I was raised where my mom and dad said, you know what? Don't just stand there, do something, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of, and you add that to that entrepreneurial spirit on top of the high D and the disc profile, the results
Right.
oriented, always got to get it done,
Right.
right? So I take those three and I enter into the business world. And what you just said flies completely in my face. And it's interesting because I've learned now as I'm aging, I guess, I'm flipping it around and it's like, don't just do something, stand there,
Right. Right.
and now all of a sudden it's like you get to appreciate beauty, you get to appreciate where you're at, you get to make a little bit more strategized moves, and you think about that. So I appreciate that. I don't know if you were raised that way where it's like, don't just
Oh yeah.
do something,
I
right?
was raised by two immigrants who knew they had to work to put food on the table and to
Okay.
create a better future for their kids. So they definitely came to this country in appreciation and gratitude of the opportunities, but they knew that work would be a part of it. So when you say, don't just stand there, do something. I also think that sometimes when you stand there, you don't just not get involved, but you also become just this critical person that nobody wants to be around because you're
Yeah.
complaining all the time. Well, why
Yeah.
is this? Well, you're roll up your sleeves and do it.
Yeah.
Like,
So how
so
would your parents like that if we said, hey, you guys, don't just do something, stand there? I mean, it just flies in a lot of different people's,
right.
their mentalities. So I appreciate that
Yeah.
are you able to better now kind of do that where you can take that time out, so to speak, and just exist and just be?
No, I'm very intentional now about having times of rest and of reset and of making sure I'm still grounded and heading in the right direction. I think, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And I
Right.
think sometimes we get caught up in those cycles. And when you think about efficiencies in companies or, teamwork or anything like that, you have to take that step back and go, is what we're doing still working for today? And I
Right.
think when you think about the way the world is changing, I think that's one of the reasons corporations are failing, because we seek that safety, that security of this is working, let's just keep doing that. No, you have to be ready for the next thing. And
Yeah.
the corporations and the companies that thrive are the ones that are always looking for that next thing. And they've accepted that there will never be a time when I get to just sit there and stand there. There will always work. I'm sure you know this,
Yeah.
as a leader of your company, you never really get a break. So you have to keep challenging yourself. It's
Right.
no different than going to the gym. You can't just lift 5 pounds today and then expect to lift 5 pounds the rest. You have to either change the way you lift those 5 pounds or add weight. Something needs to change.
But you
Or
only have to do it once, right? And then it changes.
and then I'll be fit for
Never have
life.
to go back again, right? So I'm just getting a 1 day gym membership now because Rosa said just do it once. That's so cool. So I want to kind of unpack a different side of it from the people that are on, that choose. Let's say there are people that choose to stay in their profession. Awesome, nothing wrong with that. Totally think that that's great for that type of individual. Again, nobody's better or worse, like you said, but there are going to be people that kind of what keeps them from advancing. They some people are stuck right now in maybe listening to this, and they're like, man, I wanted something different, whether that means moving up in the company, moving over in the company, might even mean away from that company. But when because you talked about career coaching, so what are some things that keep people from advancing that you found in this situation, Rosa?
I think there's so many, but the people lose themselves in their work sometimes. And but what I mean by that is, yes, there's people that are very great employees and they come in and they do great work, but they fail to take the driver's seat of their career. And what I mean by that is they just think that the company is going to take care of them or the leaders are going to take care of them. And they feel like it's up to the leaders to train them and all that. And there is some responsibility there, but ultimately, they have to run the business, right? So yeah, training you is important to them too, but they're going to train multiple people versus having the time to say, hey, let me see what Dave needs specifically, which is a little bit more on the mentoring side. And if you have someone that's going to believe in you, invest in you, you're very lucky. That's not the majority of people's experiences, because mentoring is hard work, and it usually means I have to do this in addition to what's in my plate.
Sure.
So having that expectation that the agency is going to take care of you is unrealistic. You have to continue to invest in yourself and to have some idea of where you want to go next, and not just, settle for the path that's in front of you. Again, be willing to charter your own way. Just because one path worked for someone else doesn't mean it's the right path for you.
Sure.
Or just because there's a role in place that looks appealing doesn't mean that role can't change. Job descriptions should change. We should adapt. Even if I have two people for the same job description, those two people are going to do the job differently. And if I take advantage of those qualities and talents of the person, we might get to advance in our company and move the ball forward in terms of the mission in a different way than maybe the leader thought. So what I mean by that is, when you lead, you have kind of this vague idea of how you're going to get there. But when you bring the team together and it all starts, the brainstorming and the creativity starts to happen, then you actually end up with a product that may not be exactly what you thought, but it's the exact thing that you need for the market in that moment. So people get stuck because they fail to come in with their bright ideas, and they fail to invest in those relationships that are around them. I think people think, I'm supposed to get along with everybody and they're supposed to be these wonderful people.
Sure.
And sometimes, especially for us as women, I've noticed that there's some gender differences that as a woman, I want to like the people I work with. I don't necessarily care about competing as much. I want to connect. And for guys, they don't have to like each other. They just want to compete and, be their best. And that's fine. I think both are very necessary. There's room for both. But when you have these expectations of people that I work with should be A, B, and C, that's unrealistic. We need to be able to respect who they are and accept that they bring their value in their own way, and somehow still connect and somehow still come together and bring results. And I think when you become that person that can keep a team together, you become very attractive to your leaders, and you become a go-to person. So knowing who you are, not getting lost, and not defaulting that driver's seat of your career to someone else, and also being relational and being the person that can bring people together in their best talents and bring results.
And so it kind of, like, in my mind, I wrote the word value down. You kept using that word. And it's interesting because I know that for me and a lot of people, they struggle with what their value is, low self-esteem. You get beat up on a regular basis, out in the business world. I mean, when I wrote my book, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, and I was probably like 3/4 of the way through, and I'm thinking to myself, as we started to see the landing, strip in sight, and I'm thinking this is going to be like awesome. And then all of a sudden a thought came in my head, and it was like, who's going to read this book? This little thought came in, right? And then I'm like, uh-oh. And then I'm like, my gosh, and it's taken over, going, maybe don't even finish, just this is dumb. You start with this little tiny thought, right? And all before you know it, it just explodes into this whole mind-changing thing. And even after, we were lucky, we made the conscious decision to publish on Cyber Monday, because we wanted to get on the Amazon bestseller list. So we made it in 3 categories. But even through that thing, even after, Amazon lets you know, hey, congratulations, you did this, this, and this. And I'm like, my first thought, Rosa, was, man, did my parents just buy like a warehouse full of books? I mean, it was still this value thing, right? And I'm an only child. I don't even have brothers or sisters that I can like say, hey, can you buy some books, right? And so it was so unique that value piece is like, even to this day, you struggle with that. So when you coach somebody, whether at the law enforcement or on your Empower to Bloom, when you're coaching those people, do they fight with that as well? And if they do, what are some tips that you've helped people get through that?
I think it's human nature to have that little voice, right? I think it's human
Okay.
nature to have those fears, or to even, because sometimes you feel like you're in this vacuum and you have this bright idea, but you're not connecting with your audience in that moment. You're writing a book, you know that you've seen some things that you could maybe add value to, or clarify for people, but you don't know, is there even anybody out there that sees the same thing? And
Right.
usually the answer is, yeah, those people are out there. Do the work, be diligent, and wait for that reward, because we want that feedback right now. We want 100% clarity. We want all these things to happen. And the thing is, you have to take action. One of the biggest lessons that I learned early on is build the plane while in flight. And you see that a lot, especially with the technology world, where a lot of stuff gets crowdsourced. You roll out this solution, information system solution, and it's not going to be the end product until people actually get their hands on it and start using it. And so those people are building those applications as we go. And I think in tomorrow's world, you won't have that immediate feedback of, while I'm writing this book, this is exactly what was, what's going to sell.
Yeah.
You just have to have the courage to do it. And so that little voice, you just kind of got to go, okay, I see it, I acknowledge it, but that's head trash, and just
Yeah.
identify it as such. And then go, no, I do have value to add here. There is something going on that's causing me to write this book. Like,
Yeah.
when you wake up and you're excited to write about it,
Yeah.
that alone
Right.
should tell you something, because that motivation and that excitement isn't in vain. It's there for a reason.
Yeah, that head trash, that's the word that I use on a regular basis, even from a sales perspective. It just, it just invades so many places in business. So, I don't know if you struggle with that and
Sure.
what it is. I mean, when, think of an example of when you struggle with that. How do you work through that for people? Because I'm guessing, to your point, there's more people listening that they may not even know what it is. They might call it, radio interference. You can call it whatever you want. At the end of the day, there's a task to do. And I'm talking myself out of this task as I go. Start a business, write a book, whatever it is, start a podcast, be a host on a podcast, talk in front of a group, whatever it looks like for anybody on this show. It's different for everybody.
Right.
So
Right.
you think of a spot where you had that and kind of walk us through how you achieved success so that we can, hopefully learn from that piece.
So I'm going to give you an analogy, because those moments happen a lot, Dave. It doesn't just happen once and then I've never happens again.
Wait a
You're
minute,
gonna
it's going to happen more than once? Oh, wait a minute
right?
here. No, no,
Wait a
no.
minend, I didn't sign up for that.
Come on, yeah, exactly. Wait a minute here. Where's
So,
the better? I want a better podcast. Let's go to find the No Problems podcast.
right.
Yeah.
So again, we talked about how great leaders are always innovating and are always looking for that next challenge. And so
Yeah.
every single challenge is going to come with its own doubts and fears. And it's very natural. And that's not the moment to say, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. You are human. Welcome to the human race.
Okay.
So it's just part of being human. But then you do get to have that part of being human, is that you get to have a mind that engages with your surroundings, including that little voice. And the best analogy that I can use is, I used to work a lot with horses. Part of my day job is I deployed with a horse. For 4 years I did this, and
Okay.
I learned so much from that relationship with my horse, because there had to be trust between us. That big animal will only do the thing that I ask if that horse trusts me to make sure that horse isn't going to get hurt, because that horse lives in the wild and is prey.
Yeah.
So other animals eat that horse. So little movements, it's very acute in the way
Sure.
that it sees things and recognizes dangers. And those are life-saving mechanisms, just like they are for us as human nature, right? Nobody wants to fall on their face and get hurt. We want to survive. We want to
Sure.
avoid those situations. But what you do is you take a deep breath, like what I did with my horse,
Yeah.
and I needed to stay calm and say, I know that you see this movement over here. It's just a grocery bag. It's not going to hurt you. You know? And then the horse learned, okay, that's the voice I need to listen to because I trust that voice. So you need to become that voice that comes in with reason and says, okay, I know you're afraid. Yes.
Yep.
Acknowledge the problem. Yes,
Okay.
I see the threat.
Yeah.
Right. I see the problem, and you're afraid, and it's okay. But here's why we don't need to be afraid.
Sure.
We're
Wow.
doing A, B, and C. We're investing this much.
Sure.
We're, there's something here that is very important, and we're going to do it. And we're just going to take it a step at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's okay.
Yeah.
Kind of have that inner talk,
Sure.
a pep talk,
Yeah.
and just go, okay, we saw it. It was there. No big deal. Let's move on. So,
wow, that's so cool. That is so cool. And like you bring up horses, and I have a client that has a couple horses, and recently she was on vacation, so I was feeding the horses just for fun. And I've been intimidated by horses my whole life, right? I mean, they are so big. If they don't want to do something, they're not doing it. If they want to do something, they're doing it, right? And so it's almost, I can see in business, the business path, you know what, your business is going to do something whether you want it or not, or it's not going to do something. I mean, you can do all the gymnastics in the world you want, but there's certain things that may or may not happen. So, I mean, man, so I'm assuming in your law enforcement days, you were patrolling on the horse, correct?
Yeah, so it was an ancillary duty in my case, and so I did it in addition to my main patrol functions. Okay. And at that time, we worked in a lot of riot situations. We worked in, gosh, what a time to talk about riots, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So we also were in different parades and city functions. We were in just public relations functions where we had events and the community came together for anything like Christmas events, things like that. And also we did focus patrol. So we have different parks that are very nice nature, nature locations for people to come and hang out, but you have people that are up to no good in those areas. Sure. And ruin it for everyone else. So on the horse was the perfect place perfect way to patrol those things. So those were some of the main functions that we were involved in. But the beauty of the horse is, they're these fearful animals that no one would think get scared easily, but they also are they attract people. Sure. And so people would come up to us, in a black and white police car. Different places have them different colors. In my case, they're black and white. But the scary police car that, oh my gosh, they see me, I'm scared. But on the horse, it was completely different. Wow. People were like, oh my gosh, I love the horse, and they come to you. And I think as humans, sometimes we focus so much on not wanting to be vulnerable. The horse is an animal that is easily scared. Yeah. And I think we need to be okay with being vulnerable as human beings. Oh, for sure. Because that is the thing that helps us to connect with each other. And I think sometimes when we put ourselves out there, we think we need to show up perfect, and we think we need to show up, with this grand appearance. And in reality, it's just being yourself and being real. And sometimes when you're vulnerable, being vulnerable in front of people, that's where you get those connections. That's where you really succeed, because people know you're not a fraud. Yeah. Nobody's perfect. Right.
Well, and that's crazy, because you think of vulnerability, and I think of the fact that that's personally why I would never be able to play an instrument, is because I envision myself, playing in front of all these people and then like forgetting a note or forgetting the words to a song. I don't know where this thing comes from, right? But when I'm speaking in front of people, I don't have that issue. I don't really worry about what I'm going to say, but I think about the vulnerability from an instrument's perspective, and I'm like, I could never in a million years, number one, if I can't pick it up and play it perfect, like no even practice. Right. So, but the vulnerability piece, it kind of rears its head in a variety of ways in our life. Right. When you're coaching somebody, whether for your, which other side you're on, does it take a while for you to get that, trust built up to be able to get the coachee, so to speak, to get vulnerable with you, and how do you tend to do that?
So, I mean, obviously it does take time. Trust always takes time. But the important thing is that you have to show up as yourself. You talked about playing an instrument. Let's use that example. I'm no musician, but I have dabbled in a few instruments here and there just as electives, just for fun.
Oh,
Um,
whatever.
and
Whenever it's
I,
people say for a few instruments, I know exactly what that means. I'm proficient in one. And
no.
come on, I know exactly what that means. I played the recorder in 8th grade. I could do Mary Had a Little Lamb. That was it. Okay.
it.
So that was my claim to fame.
So no, I'm not at all being modest. So part of what I encourage people to do is to try new things just
Okay.
for the heck of it.
Sure.
So soccer I played a lot. Like I'm not in shape right now, so I wouldn't challenge you to a game right now. But that was my thing. But
Okay.
I did dabble in music literally for fun because
Okay.
I think music is fun and it is interesting. What I learned is you have to operate in real time. You can't worry about the next note. You just worry about the note you're in.
Sure.
And I think sometimes when we get ahead of ourselves, that's where our timing falls apart. And so when you're coaching, what we're working on right now, we're not going to build this thing, overnight. We have a plan. We're going to be together, working together for a while. And so let's go ahead and take baby steps. It's okay. You're not going to fall.
Sure.
And so I think, like you said, that initial step into that frozen lake is the hardest one. But once you have movement, it's very easy to adjust. And I think as a coach, the key is that I have to see the person that's in front of me. And I have to also believe that that person that's in front of me has greatness inside of him or her. And I always believe that, because anyone who is willing to say, I need help,
Mm-hmm.
that's the first step. You look at people who have problems with drug addiction or any addiction. Their first step is to get out of that denial phase. And
Right.
as soon as they realize I need help, that is probably the most vulnerable moment that you felt in a while, right? Because you were putting on a show for people, and now it's like, no, I see that I have a problem. I'm not in denial anymore. I
Sure.
need help. That's vulnerable.
Sure.
And so it's beautiful because you get to have someone who now is teachable, and now we can fix this thing. When you were in denial, that wasn't going to happen.
Sure. And that's so you bring up this really cool point. And my next book I'm working on is called What Blind Spot, because it's
Ooh,
talking about business blind spots. So my question to you is, there are people, Rosa, that really don't know what they don't know. They don't,
yes.
none of us know our blind spot, right? We can't, that's why we have mirrors in our car, to be able, you didn't have mirrors on your horse, did you? You had to actually
I had to turn my head.
yeah, exactly. You have to turn your head. But I mean, so there is a legitimate blind spot that people don't know. So how do you determine blind spot? And you might not even know the question answer, because I'm
No.
struggling with this one. Blind spot versus denial. I mean, how do you know? And I'm going to tap into your UCLA psych major here. And how, think about that from a business perspective, right? There's plenty of businesses that have blind spots. I mean, the companies that have gone bankrupt, the companies, Blockbuster's a prime example, 8,000 stores to one.
Yeah.
Was it a blind spot that they really didn't see it coming? Or was it just in denial? Hey, we'll be fine. Don't worry about it. How do you determine, in your own words, like if I come to you and I don't know if it's a blind spot or denial, how do you help somebody kind of work their way through that?
So that's a big question. First of all,
Yeah.
I'm excited about this book you're writing. I'm
Yeah,
going to read
yeah,
it
me too.
because
Yeah,
that's a big issue.
it
And
is.
I
Yep.
think the biggest thing is, I'll start with the example of the horse. It did not have rear view mirrors,
Yep.
but it was very sensitive, more sensitive than I ever will be. So it recognized movement. So the way his ears would move, I
Okay.
knew where his attention was.
Oh,
And I
boom.
was paying attention to him at all times, because I know I don't want this animal to freak out. So
Sure.
I was always connected with where the horse is. And I think when you're in charge of teams, you have to be connected with your teams, because there is always someone that is going to raise their hand and go, hey, have we looked at this?
Yeah.
And if you're not prepared to give that person attention and credibility,
Yep.
then yeah, you're going to get blindsided. But in reality, when you look at anything, so in my day job, I see a lot of dysfunction, broken marriages, divorces, people fighting over their children, like real life issues.
Yeah.
And you start asking questions, you start investigating, nothing ever happens overnight.
Right.
There was a pattern there. No problem ever. You didn't show signs that it was there.
Right.
So in a way, it's a blindside, but in a way, it's our unwillingness to pay attention. So in psychology, you talk about multitasking, and in reality, you have attention. You're dividing your attention, and it makes you less effective. So in reality, multitasking really doesn't exist. You're just like, you're doing one thing right now, and then you're 5 seconds here, 5 seconds there, and then you're just kind of pushing them all forward and juggling and trying to make it work.
Yep.
But really, where is your attention is what it comes down to. And as a leader, if you're not paying attention to what your people are saying, if you're so busy being comfortable, and if you're so busy resting on your laurels, you're not going to be looking for those problems. And when those problems start to show up, you don't want to see them because you're comfortable.
Yeah.
So you have to surround yourself with people that tell you the truth, and you have to be willing to see the truth, good, bad, and ugly,
Sure.
not just the good stuff. And so when the ugly presents itself, and you're not patting people on the back for saying, you know what, thank you for having the courage to telling me that
Sure.
this is messed up and we're
Yep.
messing up over here. If you don't encourage those behaviors, then your people will stop telling you them. So that's where the blind spot happens. You're training them not to tell you
Yep.
about the problems in the organization. You're
Yep.
training them not to tell you when something's wrong because they're afraid of you.
Wow.
So that trust needs to be developed, and you need to look. If people aren't coming to you with problems, then they don't need you.
Right. Yeah.
Why are you there?
Yeah. No kidding, right? That's so cool. Wow. Thank you. And again, I don't know if there's right or wrongs to it. I just was looking at it from a psychological perspective, hoping that we could tie that with business in, because, you see how many companies out there that just either are in denial. I mean, you look at the story of Kodak, and the guy that Steve Sasson that invented the Instamatic camera.
Mm-hmm.
He was told, hey, don't tell anybody about this. We think that this is a fad. This isn't going to work. I mean, this was 10 years before the making of somebody else coming along and getting it. And they ended up, filing bankruptcy because, was it a blind spot, or were they in denial? And those are tough questions that we have to ask ourselves as business leaders. If you're on a team right now, 3 out of 4 people leave that company because of the boss, the leader,
Right.
Whatever. So is it a blind spot they have, or is it actually are they in denial? When somebody's in denial, I have a whole lot less grace with them, I'm going to say, than somebody that has a blind spot. If they don't know they're doing it, oh my gosh, all day long, right? You extend as much grace and give them opportunities to make it right, but it's the denial of, I don't have that problem, right?
Right. No, I like that distinction that you made, because I hadn't actually ever thought about it. So another reason to be excited about your book. But
oh my gosh, all right, wait a minute. A psych major actually said that to me. Mom, if you're listening, see, my college and high school and grade school, it all paid off. Okay. So
it's true. I actually do analyze that, the return on investment with college education versus coaching,
Sure.
because I see now a lot of universities as these big companies, they own a lot of real estate. They're like, tuition rates keep going up, and I'm going like, why aren't universities the most nimble places of, people being creative and idea platforms? Like why aren't they that anymore?
Yeah.
Why are they just like, you go there, you pay a lot of money, and you get, fed a bunch of information, you get tested, and you're just like, it's just like this thing you have to survive and get your diploma so you can go and really learn. But I digress.
Oh, no worries. That's awesome. So I want to start to come in for landing here. You got to come back. We got to do this again.
I'd love to.
I had all this. I wanted to learn all about the field operations supervisor, and I just had all these I wanted to learn. But I want to ask about your mini course called Get Unstuck. So help us understand what that is, and how we can learn more about that.
Sure. So one of the things that I do is I coach people that feel like they're stuck, like the guy in Kodak that had this bright idea and nobody heard him, right? There's so many people that have these talents and great ideas, and they feel stuck because no one's listening to them. They feel unseen and unheard. And I think if you're stuck in that situation, there's a miniature course. It's a little bit of training and then some homework that you can easily just sit down and kind of get a sense of awareness that I put together. And it's yours for free. If you want to visit empowertobloom.com, just enter your name and your email, and we'll send that right over. Awesome. But the idea there is just to give you a taste of what's out there for you. are you in alignment with your purpose? Are you
Sure.
in alignment with what you were created to be? Are you even in touch with your greatest value assets and
Sure.
attributes? So that was the idea behind that mini course.
Okay, so here's the $1,000,000 question. If I jump into this, is it like, oh my gosh, scary?
It
Like,
should be excited. You should be excited about it. You should be
okay,
excited to discover yourself, right? And there's a workshop that is also free that you'll get information for, that we do regularly. And that workshop, we basically unpack that a little bit more. But you
okay.
should be excited to get to know you. If you're not excited about who you are, then why should anybody else be excited to have you in the room, right? So if it's been a minute, and you feel like other people are noticing you, well, how much have you been neglecting yourself? Because that's where it started.
Well, let's be real though here, Rosa, is okay. I mean, I work Monday through Friday, right? I come home at the end of the week and I'm just like spent, right? And then I'm thinking, well, what I got to do this weekend and cut the grass and all this stuff that I got to do, right? Feed the dog and, feed the horses if I get a chance. All this stuff has to happen. How
Right.
in the world do I have this time to like get excited about my life? Because you know what, we all get into these ruts,
Right.
and so this feels like this get unstuck is kind of like, anytime it's there's like it's like a hard stop, like there's a
Hmm.
pull going in the ground, something's going to change.
Right.
Otherwise don't do the course, right? If you're
Right.
just going to watch or listen or do whatever, I always tell people, you know what, don't do it. If you're just here to get your credits, go get
That's
your
not the
credits somewhere else, right? Because it's really
right.
frustrating to learn all this stuff and then just go, oh, that was good, kind of,
Right.
you know uh, brush my hands, put the binder up and with all the other binders of things. So I'm going to just encourage the people listening, don't do it if you're not stuck. And if you really don't want to get unstuck, I mean, you probably don't even know you're stuck at certain situations, but is it really like, just tell me the truth. Is it really, oh my gosh, life changing if I take it on? That's what I
So,
want.
so if you're completely happy with your life and you don't want to do anything greater than where you're at, and you're perfectly happy with the status quo, then you're right.
Yeah.
It's not for you. But
Okay.
if you know that there's more out there that you could be doing, and you feel like, you know what, I know that I'm valuable even right now, but I just don't feel like I'm in alignment, and I'm not getting the most out of life. I'm not feeling 100% fulfilled. And
Okay.
yeah, I do come home and have all these chores, but like, am I so spent that even those chores don't feel, I'm not even enjoying my time off at this
Yeah.
point? If you know that something needs to change, then definitely take the course. It's not a major time investment. It's
Okay.
just that you need to have a self-awareness about where you're at, and that
Okay.
here's your moment to redirect your life.
So here's what I'm thinking. This just came to me. You tell me what you think. I'd like to do it. And
Uh-huh.
then I'd like to get together again on another podcast soon so that we can, like, I can tell you my journey. And would you help me along on that?
Absolutely. Well, you can join the workshop. We have workshops coming up about 8 weeks, and the
Okay.
workshop is 4 days of training,
Oh my
and
gosh.
we'll spend 4 days together, and we can really dial it in.
Holy
So
cow.
that one's also free. So
Four
definitely,
days of free training? Are you kidding?
right? No, so I believe in giving value. There are people who will want to work with me beyond that, and I'm certainly going to invite people to
Sure.
work with me beyond that.
Okay.
But the whole thing is, you have to put your value out there. Otherwise, like, I don't know. To me, you have to believe that what you're bringing to the world has value to other people. And
Okay.
if I just talk about it and never actually give it, then people just have to take my word for it. So I
Sure.
like for
Sure.
people to decide for themselves.
So am I doing 4 days? Like I got to clear my schedule for 4 days?
No, it's so the way that I do it is I do an
Can we at
hour
least
of
do it in
light
Hawaii?
training.
Is there like some perk to this where it's in warm weather or something? Or
There you go. It's virtual. So
oh, okay.
you can go to Hawaii and do it there for sure.
Yeah.
But it's virtual for an hour, and then I do assign homework each day. And the whole idea is just, give yourself the 4 days to really transition and
Okay.
figure out what changes you need to make. And then you get to move on and take the time to implement whatever you learned out of those 4 days.
But the mini course is just the first step, right?
Right. That's just a taste.
All
If
right.
you wanted to try it out, it's
Yes.
available for free.
So I want
Go
to
to
do
empower.
that. I want to
Yeah.
do that. And then I want to get back together with you. And then I want to share with the world what I found. You can take your psychology hat, put it on, and analyze the, the world of me, so that it'll be at least fun. Then people, maybe I'll get some people that want to take it with me on here. So I think it'd really be a cool thing. So
Yeah, for sure.
awesome. So as we come in for a landing, two more questions. Number one is tip of the week. What if, in this case, what's Rosa's tip of the week for anybody listening?
Well, the tip that I would bring to everyone is to believe that you have something great inside of you. And if you don't can't honestly say that and believe it, then let's take a step back and figure out where you got lost in the process.
Awesome. Cool. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. And then the second one, which is even harder, this is the tough one. What's one thing most people don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing?
you know, most people probably in this audience don't know that I really enjoy cycling, and the reason I enjoy it is because that's kind of my me time. You don't just go out for a 5 minute ride. When you're going to go ride 20, 30, 40 miles. I've also done endurance riding. It's over the course of 5 days,
Oh my
100 plus
God.
miles. But right now, 25, 30 miles, you're out there for a couple hours. So I really enjoy doing that because it's my me time.
Okay, so there's a difference right there between a guy like me that goes on his bike, okay, and you that cycles, okay. There's a total different thing going on right there. I can already tell. So that is so cool. Well, this time just flew by. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So the last thing is, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, wants to learn more about you as a person, wants to learn more about Empower to Bloom, what's the best way for people to reach out to you on your platforms, Rosa?
So my website is still under construction, but rosaponcedeleon.com is definitely where it's at. It should be fully live within the next few weeks.
Okay.
But also empowertobloom.com. If you want to get that mini course, it'll put you on our email list and you'll get our newsletter and many more ways to connect with us.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. I was like thinking, okay, another coach, how am I going to talk to, but I didn't get to what I wanted to talk to. So please accept my invitation to come back. I'm going to do the
Well,
Get Unstuck mini course. I'm going to keep you posted, and then we're going to do a follow-up on this. I've never done this before, so I'm making myself vulnerable, putting myself out there, but I'm committing to you in the audience. I'm going to do this. So hold me accountable, everybody, so that I can get
awesome.
done. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for your service to the law enforcement. Tough times out there for you guys, I'm sure, but there are, like you said before, there's a ton of us that totally value and honor what it is that you do for us, and we sleep well at night knowing that you got our back. So thank you for that. And in all seriousness, I can't wait to get back and to do this again. So thanks again, and we will talk with you very shortly.